I should honestly start a tally for how many times I film videos with wet hair. Hi everybody, my name is Maddie and welcome back to my channel, or thanks for joining us if you're new here. Alright, we got 5 videos coming out in 5 days. This is like my pre-run Canada Reads thing that I started doing last year. So essentially, I am going to be reviewing all of the books for the Canada Reads event title fight over the next 5 days, with Canada Reads starting on the following Monday. For those of you who don't know what Canada Reads is, it is an annual book competition in Canada where 5 Canadian celebrities come to defend 5 Canadian novels, and there is like a central theme for like one book Canada should read. And this year it is the one book to connect us. So there's about an hour debate every day starting next Monday on the 28th, and at the end of each day they vote a book off until the final day when there is one book left that is crowned champion. So our very first book that we are going to talk about today is Scarborough, and this is written by Catherine Hernandez. So the premise of this book is, in Scarborough, a low-income urban neighborhood, 3 kids struggle to rise above poverty, abuse, and a system that consistently fails them. The adults in their lives either rise to the occasion or fall by the wayside. Together, they make up a troubled yet inspired community that refuses to be undone. So, to dive a little bit more into the plot, yes, essentially this book follows a series of families in Scarborough, and a teacher, I guess is probably the right word for her, who comes in to run like a literacy program, and a lot of the barriers to access that she faces in trying to help the community, and kind of, you know, it starts as this critique about how like blanket programs don't really work if you're not like looking at the needs of one community are going to be completely different from the needs in another community, and how herself as well as the families learn to try and face a lot of the adversity that exists in the community without having the support to overcome or deal with that. To dive a little bit more into the characters, I think my favorite character was probably Miss Hina, who is that librarian teacher who is running this program. Her dedication to the kids, but also her willingness to call out the assholes who are her bosses, that are basically like, you shouldn't just be like giving out food to these kids, and like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but like maybe you can come all the way to downtown Toronto to talk about these issues, and just being flat out racist jerks. I really liked her, and her just like, you know, love and adoration for the kids. That's one thing that really stuck with me about this book, is the beginning of this book is dedicated to a child that I assume Catherine Hernandez worked with, and it's like, you know, you were going through neglect. I don't know like where you are now, but know I loved you enough to write you this book. And I think there's something to be said for people who, you know, work in those jobs and see kids struggle every day, and like only are able to do so much to help them, but continue to try and make a difference however they can. That's something that is really powerful. This book also follows Sylvie and her mom and her younger brother. Her younger brother is autistic, but it's undiagnosed at the beginning of the book, largely because the doctor's racist and won't help the native mom out. And yeah, their family is Indigenous, so that was really cool for me to like read more about Indigenous rep. I get very excited anytime I read about Indigenous reps, because I'm like, oh my god, people remember we exist. There's Lucy, I believe her name is, who is a young girl that's just been dropped off from her mother to stay with her father, and her father is not the nicest guy. But he's the racist. He's a Nazi. That's fine. I could say that. That's true. He has an Iron Cross tattoo and used to be a skinhead. So that's him. And then we also follow Bing and his mother, who are immigrants from the Philippines. Or I believe his mother is, at least. I don't know if he grew up in the Philippines. Yeah, And then they start to like throw in a whole bunch of other characters at the end, so I think that's where I'll transition this. It just works easier to start talking about what I didn't like first. Okay, so my old phone is being funky. I just got this new one in, and I'm gonna have to do the last half of this video again because I don't know, it said it recorded the whole thing and then it didn't. I think where I left off was saying that this is a good place to transition into the things that I didn't like about this book. And the first 100 pages of this book is really good. We get a lot of character development. I feel like everything happens really smoothly. And then in the second half of the book, she just starts throwing all these new characters at us, and they're not like new in the sense of like we don't know who they are, although sometimes I did have a hard time figuring out who they are, but like new in the sense of, you know, it's like the lady who gave them chicken when the freezers broke down on the street. It's the neighbors of people who live in different buildings, and sometimes that made it like really hard and disjointed to follow because like they were side characters that I didn't really think I needed to register like where they live, who they live closest to, and all of that information. And I felt like I really lost the thread of the narrative because of that. And it just kind of fell apart for me in the second half. I think it would have been a much stronger book if she had just focused on Sylvie and Laura. I know I called her Lucy, her name is actually Laura, and Bing, like those three families, their parents, and then Miss Hina, and how Miss Hina comes into their lives and tries to help them navigate the struggles that they're going through. I think that would have made for a much more compelling narrative, especially when this book is so short and she was only going to have so much time to get through everything. One other thing I didn't like about this book, and this could be like a me ace thing. I'm curious to hear other people's perspectives on this event. So one of the things that the book explores is Bing kind of coming to terms with his homosexuality, but the age threw me off. And I don't know if this is like because I'm demi-romantic asexual and I don't experience these things in the same way as other people. I'm also not, I don't have a penis, so some of the like biology things I don't necessarily understand or I only know from reading and research. But he's 10, I think, in this book, and he gets to kiss this boy in his class, and there's this line about like a stirring in his snow pants, a hardness, that's what it is, a hardness in his snow pants. And I was like, I guess I started sex ed in grade 5, but to me I'm like, is that a thing? Like, I'm all for like positive sexuality representation in literature, but I also don't know if we should be like sexualizing kids, or I'm like, I don't even know if Bing understands what that is yet. Maybe that's just a biological reaction that starts at that age. I don't know. It made me uncomfy with the characters being children, and I don't know if that's like a me thing, not understanding what was happening, or if that's an actual strong critique of the book. Interested to hear other people's thoughts on that. I think the thing that I really liked about this book was she does a really good job of using like the eyes or the perspective of children to narrative inequality like in society. So I think there's a lot of things that like the parents think that they're hiding or stories that they're telling to the kids, and being able to see how the kids are like perceiving things is really interesting, particularly with Laura and her dad's racism and how she's trying to like navigate that, but also his like anger and wanting to be loved. With Sylvie and some of the other kids, you know, there's talk about Santa Claus, and that, you know, for kids from upper class or middle class communities, like Santa Claus is a myth, but for kids whose parents are struggling, like Santa Claus doesn't get to be a myth. Like they just need to know that he's not real because they don't have the financial capabilities to get presents for the kids. And all of that was just really fascinating, kind of thinking about, you know, people think that these like big structures are something that you have to navigate more as an adult, and children are actually really perceptive to what is happening, and that is shaping them and the way that they view the world, which is something that I think that the book did really well, and something that I wish that the book had gone into more. Yeah, and I think that's something that the book does really well, is being able to narrate and give voice to these structures of, well, racism and structural inequality and the way that that impacts communities. And, you know, there's needs to be better supports in place to help
parents and the families have the resources that they need to get through things, and understanding that like a program that's going to be run in like an upper class neighborhood in downtown Toronto might be completely different from a program that you need in a low income neighborhood in Scarborough, and needing to understand that and the importance of having those resources available to kids from a very young age. I also liked the story about the gifted program, and that's just a very personal thing to me because I had a really hard time when I was selected to go into a gifted program and I left all of my friends. My friends didn't take it well and they kind of lashed out at me. So that idea of Bing feeling like, you know, a chapter of his life is ending when he's leaving to go to the gifted program, but like also wanting to be able to use his intelligence or this gift that he has to be able to hopefully find a way out of the community. And that just resonated with me on a really personal level. Was something that I thought that the author did really well. His gifted programs have all sorts of layers of problems to them, but there's also a lot there too, so that's a video for another time. Yeah, in terms of writing, I thought this book was fairly well written, especially in the terms of, like I talked about, the children being written really well, and I think that's something that could be difficult for adult authors to do. I don't know if they like lose sense of like how old children are at certain times, or try to like remember being kids themselves, because sometimes I find they'll like age up or age down kids with information that doesn't really make sense. And that was the thing with Bing, where I was like, I don't know if this is the right age for this, but maybe I'm wrong, because I've never been a young boy before. So that was the one thing that I was thinking about. And then just that problem that I've already talked about, where I didn't like it, where like the narrative really got lost and jumbled in trying to cover so much at once. I think that the writing really would have benefited from a much closer analysis of a certain select characters. The other thing that I didn't quite like in this book, and I don't know if this is like an I didn't like it or a writing thing, is grief-wise, the characters that we followed after a character dies wasn't really the characters that I thought we were going to follow, and that was a little bit odd to me. So yeah, I guess I won't touch too much more on writing, because I think all the writing critiques I already covered in the things that I didn't like about the book. I wasn't hit with a lot of pow sentences in this novel, to be honest. I wasn't like writing things down. The concepts were really interesting, and I think the execution started to work, but I think it really lost that strength in the narration and the writing throughout. Yeah, okay, stop repeating yourself, Maddie. Move on to the next point. The next point is, how well does this book connect us? I think this book does a really good job, at least in the first half, of like connecting us by reminding us of like the importance of community. And I think it's very easy for people who aren't like don't know people in low-income communities or aren't adjacent to low-income communities to kind of have that NIMBYism idea that like not in my backyard, and kind of push it off as being somebody else's problem. And I think by articulating and providing a voice, and through that voice articulating the humanity of these characters, is really powerful for people who don't have that experience, to be able to maybe be able to understand and have a lot more empathy and understanding for those characters. There's also this like weird idea that like people got themselves in that situation and need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and like that is definitely not true. And that is also something that is very clear in this book, especially like a lot of these children, you can't blame them for what's happened, right? Like this is things that have been like happening for generations, or as a product of like structures that are way bigger than themselves and their ability to control. So I think that this book so far is like one of the best ones in terms of like connecting us in a broader sense, because I think it looks at providing a human face to structural issues, and I think those structural issues touch all of us in a lot more ways than we realize. And I think that might be a good way to start articulating and beginning those conversations about, okay, yeah, this is a problem. Now where do we go from here? So that's where I'm gonna wrap up that book. Tomorrow I will be doing Five Little Indians. The video mostly worked for that one, but I'm gonna have like a weird 1-minute cut in the middle where it's footage of me in this outfit from today. And then after that, I haven't quite decided which one I'm doing day 3 and day 4, but one will be What Strange Paradise, and then Washington Black, and Friday will definitely be in the City of Dirty Water because I have not got that book from the library yet, but hopefully it comes in. So if you've read this book, if you're watching Canada Reads, feel free to leave me a comment down below, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe so you get notifications when the rest of the videos come out throughout this week. I will see y'all tomorrow, and till then, stay kind.